So if you're currently feeling reactive, dysregulated, or overwhelmed, this is your reminder that tomorrow, Tuesday, the 18th of March, the first of my workshops is beginning, and that is how to regulate your ADHD nervous system, brain, and body. There will be recordings available if you are listening to this after Tuesday. And this is the first workshop of my series, the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Workshop Series, and that's happening between March and July. So if you sign up to the All Access Pass, you'll get all the reminders, all the recordings, and there'll be resources as well being sent through. And if you pay for this All Access Pass, you'll have the opportunity to join my bonus Ask Me Anything session, which is going to be happening at the beginning of July. All the information is in the show notes and on my website, and I really hope to see you there. So hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Wisdom. It is a Monday and I'm coming to you with some really exciting news. Well, I think it's exciting anyway, and you guys are the first to hear it. I have written a book. It feels very weird saying it. You may have heard me dropping some hints or mentioning it here and there, but to actually be able to talk about it and to announce it feels incredibly surreal. And I wanted you guys to hear about it first, because if it wasn't for the podcast and if it wasn't for you guys, this book wouldn't be happening. And I wanted to create an honest reality about it as well, because I think so many times we see people on social media say, I've written a book, and then they just kind of do this whole announcement and they do all these unpacking videos and all the things that we're sort of told to do from a promotional perspective. And actually, I love breaking it down and actually showing the real version of it. And I thought, what better way than to give you a bit of an insight into writing a book with ADHD. This coming Thursday, I'm going to be doing a long form episode, and I've got a lovely person interviewing me. It's Hannah from the Full of Beans podcast. She's going to be interviewing me, and we're going to be talking all about the book, what's in it, the why behind it, what it's going to help you with, all the things of what this book is about. Now, I've not even told you the name of the book. Surprise, surprise, it's the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit. And that is essentially what it is. I really wanted to bring you a practical, holistic wellbeing toolkit to managing your life with ADHD, but not just managing it, like how to thrive, how to live well, how to live your best life alongside your late in life discovered or diagnosed ADHD. So this is very much about creating a way, a path forward to help you find ways every day through lifestyle changes, mindset changes, for you to discover an authentic way of living that may not look like what other people are doing. It may not look like what another ADHD person is doing. This is all about finding all the different aspects of living with ADHD and finding the ways that work for you. It's available now for pre-order, and then it officially comes out in July. Now, the pre-orders are really, really important because it establishes how many books are then dispersed into bookshops around the world. So I didn't understand any of this, which is why I'm breaking it down for you. So the reason why we have pre-orders, typically, obviously, going straight to the biggest kind of retailer in the world, which is Amazon, but you can pre-order from other places, obviously. I'm going to be putting a link in today's show notes so you can pre-order it wherever you feel comfortable. And the reason for this is the pre-orders then give bookshops an idea of the level of interest. So for me, it's incredibly important because I want to get this book into local bookshops, into your local high street. We want to get the independent bookshops stocking it and not just direct everybody to the beast that is Amazon, which is incredibly helpful. And I use it pretty much every single day, but I want to give more independent retailers a fair chance as well. And I'm going to be sharing so much about the book because for me, it's all about disseminating this information. The big why behind writing this book was, what did I need when I was first diagnosed? And I needed this book, genuinely. The reason why I started the podcast, and I needed guidance, I needed support, I needed help, I needed someone to shine a light to the path that I didn't know was there, or a path that no one had trodden before, or had understood why we need to put certain or many wellbeing and holistic practices in place to help us do well at life, to help us have better energy, to help us with our hormones, our diet, our sleep, our mindset, being able to cultivate more joy and fulfillment and creativity and connection and self-compassion. And yes, I really, really think that skills and executive functioning and routines and all sorts of things are very important. The very sort of practical concepts of managing ADHD. But I also deeply believe it's a spiritual evolution. We have to evolve on a soul level because we may have been talking to ourselves and telling ourselves for decades that there's something wrong with us, that perhaps we've got a personality deficit, flaw, default to negative ways of living, for not being able to keep up, that we're always failing, like this very negative mindset that we may have had. And when we realize and discover that actually it's a neurobiological difference, it's something different in the wiring of our brains, the chemicals of our brains, but also the biology of our body. We're only just learning so much about the connection with our nervous system, with our hormones, with cortisol levels. I mean, there's so much. Literally, we're scratching the surface now. And if you've listened to the podcast for, as long as I've been doing it, you will know that over the years, we've been discovering all of this together. I've been interviewing expert after expert and asking all the questions because I knew that my ADHD didn't just present in my working memory, in me walking into a room and forgetting what I'd come in for, or for my anxiety, my restless mind, my overthinking, which also contributes to me coming up with amazing ideas, for me being able to be very resourceful and fast on my feet and see things that other people don't see. But obviously that comes for so many of us with a huge amount of, I would say, internal pain and challenges and difficulties and sensitivities. So I talk about a lot of this in the book as well, especially RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, and how that impacts our life and impacts the way we show up in life, and how we can recognize it, understand it, see it for what it is, and then gently move through it. So I'm really proud of this book. I have to say, it nearly took me down with it. I will be so honest, because it was a very fast turnaround, and I have my agent to thank for that, who was amazing, Jessica Killingley, and she is also neurodivergent herself, and we worked so hard on this book proposal together. But what we did was we really honed in on what I wanted to share with the world. And I was so conscious that I didn't want it to be another ADHD book, just talking about how awful ADHD is and how hard it is to live with. And I'm fully aware I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I am me. I am a blend of lots of different modalities that I've learned, from wellbeing and health coaching to NLP to EFT tapping to lots of other sort of coaching courses, and all my ADHD learnings and everything that I've learned from the experts. And in very typical ADHD style, it's blended together in a very sort of, in a non-orthodox way. I've accumulated all this information. And for me, the biggest thing is the curiosity of asking the questions and sharing the information with you guys. And that is what the podcast does. The podcast brings these people in. I ask all the questions. I really get to the nitty gritty because I'm living it 24/7 with myself, with my family, in my relationships, in my family, in my career, in my friendships, in my health, in my perimenopause. I'm literally on the ground with you. And I wanted to write a book that felt very authentic to what I needed. And I believe that from hearing from so many of you, that what I need is also what you guys need. So I've tried to put all of this into this toolkit. Now, I'm going to give you a little breakdown of what is in the book, because I do believe that it's important to know. I'm not going to bore you too much, but we talk about the awakening, this authentic awakening. And then I move into our anxiety, our restlessness, the way our brain works, the way we have these emotional sensitivities, including rejection sensitive dysphoria. And I'm really proud that we talk about the nervous system, and something that I'm very interested in and what I've studied is polyvagal theory. So we talk about a lot about how our nervous system interacts with our ADHD, and our ADHD interacts with our nervous system. So we can understand the biggest thing for me, and the help that has created for living better with ADHD, is psychoeducation. And I truly believe that's the most empowering thing. So if we can psychoeducate ourselves, our loved ones, our kids, so we can live with more self-acceptance. And with self-acceptance comes self-compassion and self-understanding. And then we can start playing to our strengths. Instead of constantly lambasting ourselves and getting angry with ourselves, we can understand where our challenges are. And without judgment, we can move through them. We can find new structures and scaffolding and support. We can ask for help. And then we can choose more empowered ways of living. So we carry on through the book. We are learning how to live in sync with our hormones, preventing burnout, understanding what burnout is, what that looks like, but also finding ways to prevent that burnout. And then we come towards sort of the last quarter of the book, where it's building a life that works for you. And through that, we are boosting our creativity. We're leaning into joy and finding more fulfillment. But we're also learning to simplify our life as well. So we're coming at it, as you can see, from lots of angles. And I truly believe that understanding ADHD is a brain-body experience. We're understanding it from the mind, from the soul, from the nervous system, the body, how we hold on to the stress, how it shows up with our different conditions, autoimmune conditions, pain, women's health issues such as endometriosis, but also things like fibromyalgia, being able to understand we've lived with stress our lives, chronic stress of not understanding ourselves. We've lived with not being able to recognize why our challenges are there and what blocks have been in place and what's causing those blocks. And finally, we're getting this understanding. And, we really are at the tip of the iceberg here of understanding the impact of neurodivergence and the late in life diagnosis of that. And I'm so glad to see that there are a lot of studies coming out now, more research, ranging from understanding hypermobility, understanding the gut issues, understanding the interplay of diet, nutrition and movement and stress reduction and calming our nervous system, as opposed to just saying, right, find me a hack, find me a tip, let's, a 5-minute hack to eliminate our ADHD. It's not about that. This is lifelong learning. And I truly believe that this book is going to be that toolkit that you are able to bring to your day. You can open it wherever you are in that day, wherever you are in your cycle, in your hormones, and you're able to maybe glean something from one chapter one day and then something completely different another day. My real true aim with this book, which I've worked so hard with, is ensuring that this is something you can come back to time and time again. For me, the greatest book is something that I keep on my bedside table or keep on my desk or my kitchen. And when I just need to lean into that support, and when I can really know that the person or the thing or the guidance is going to give me through a very understanding lens, through a lens of understanding how ADHD can show up in all its fluctuations and uniqueness. And especially as women, how we're dictated by our hormones and our cycle, that one day to another can feel very different with our mood, our energy, our outlook, our mindset. So I truly believe that the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit facilitates all that, because I really did try and ensure in the limitations that I had of the word count, they were so strict with me. And I think it's a good thing, because as we know with ADHD, we want to include everything in the kitchen sink. So it could have been a bit of an encyclopedia, but they've made it, the publishers, the amazing publishers, DK, have helped me make this concise, readable. We've worked together to make it feel very neurodiverse friendly. I know sometimes when I'm kind of given a book and it's just page upon page of just text, that I find it really hard to process. So I've made sure that it's broken down with lots of different bullet points and sections, and there's some diagrams. We've made it really beautiful with different colours. I'm so proud of it. I really am. And I have huge imposter syndrome, just so you know. So we're allowed to work with the different, I would say, sort of modalities of feeling very proud, but also very scared, and really exceptionally excited, but incredibly nervous. And we're allowed to just live in this reality of lots of differing opinions and perspectives. And that's okay. And I talk about this in the book as well. But what I do want to say is writing a book with ADHD is difficult. It is challenging. I know it's challenging for anyone. And I genuinely didn't think I would know how to do it. I really had at the beginning, I knew I wanted to write a book, but I really didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And for me, now that I know all that I know about ADHD, and I know and coach people, and I had to really step into that place of, if you want to do this, you need to ask for help, and you need to put the right scaffolding in place and the right support and accommodations. And I asked for what I needed. And I had an amazing, amazing woman, Linda, who I want to give a shout out to, who I call my book angel, because Linda, thankfully, was a contact of my agent. And I said to my agent, Jessica, I said, I want to write this book. I so want to write this book, but I am terrified my ADHD is going to block me. And I'm not going to be able to get all the things that I want to get out of my head onto a piece of paper in a structured way that the publishers are going to want. And I was terrified that I was going to self-sabotage this opportunity. And I said to her, I need someone to come and help me with the word vomit that is in my brain and help me decipher how and what I'm going to write. And I basically just kind of took everything that was in my brain and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And she helped give me structure. We worked with the publishers to really knuckle down and find a structure that we hope is really neurodivergent friendly. And Linda helped me do that. So I really don't want to gloss over the truth. I want you to know that, yes, it can be really hard, especially with our executive functioning, especially with wanting to do everything, and the burnout and the staying up late and feeling constantly under pressure and like I was never doing enough. There was always more to do. And to have someone by my side who was gunning for me, who was rooting for me, who was helping me, who kept saying to me, how can I help you? What can I do? And she would just say, send me what you've written and I will help you. And I can't begin to emphasize enough how powerful that was. And for her, it was just part of her job. She works in publishing. She is an editor herself. This wasn't the biggest, most difficult job for her, but for me, it was a godsend. So we have to remember that it's okay to ask for that help. It's okay to say, I'm really, really good at this, but I know I'm going to struggle in this section. So I knew that I had all the words to say. I had the ideas, I had the concepts, but it was really a struggle for me to condense it down, to keep it concise, to know how to break it down, to make it very easily processable, if that's a word. So huge thanks to Linda. And I wanted to share this snippet of a podcast episode from, I think it was back in July, with the author Kate Spencer, who is an amazing novelist. She's written loads of fantastic novels based in the States, and she also has ADHD. And I remember speaking to her back in July or June, whenever I recorded it, and I was in the throes of writing, towards the end of the book. I think I was stressed. I think I was worried, nervous. I think I'd lost a little bit of faith in myself that I could actually do this, because the ADHD was there. It really is. And I promise you, it doesn't go away, but we find the tools and we find the support and we have a change in our narrative. And I really did do that. And I kept going back to that voice in my head of, you can't do this. And I kept saying, you can. Ask for the help, ask for the support. You're doing it. You are leaning into all of your strengths, and you're asking for help where you are struggling. So I spoke to Kate Spencer about this, and I wanted to share it with you because I know so many of you are amazing ADHD creatives. I know that you probably have something out there in your soul, in your heart, that you want to put out to the world, whether it's a book, an album, a business, an idea, a concept, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be what I'm doing. It could look very different, but you might want to put it out into the world, and there might be something in you, a limiting belief saying, but you can't do it, or you don't know how to do it, or you've never been able to do this, or who are you to do this? And I want to share with you, I was that person. And I managed to get through it. And it wasn't easy. It was kind of like riding through a storm. Some days were better, some days were easier, some days were harder. But knowing I had people behind me rooting for me who wanted me to succeed and wanted to help me was everything. So the honest answer is, was it hard? Yes. Was it worth it? I really hope so. If you could pre-order my book, I would be incredibly, incredibly grateful. Now, if you pre-order the book, I am going to make sure that you get something very cool in return. And I'm working this out right now. It's going to be probably a free workshop, but it's also going to be access to my on-demand resources. So if you pre-order the book, and you send me a screenshot of the order, you can DM it to me online on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever, or you drop me an email, kate@adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk. You screenshot the pre-order. I promise you're going to get access to my on-demand workshops at a huge discount, and you're going to be able to join a free workshop, Q&A, ask me anything. I'm really excited about this. I'm going to make sure that for you to pre-order this book, so it arrives on the 3rd of July in your hands, you will totally have forgotten all about it. And it'll be a past version of you giving that future version of you a present, and you'll open that parcel and you'll be like, wow, here is the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit. I totally forgot I ordered it, but what a lovely gift. So I am so, so grateful. Thank you so much for all of this. Have a listen to this little snippet from Kate Spencer, and I hope it'll empower you and give you that inner strength to really do what you need to do to get that project, that soul expression of you out into the world so more people can be helped, more people can be inspired. We can model to more neurodivergent women that if it's all possible, yes, it doesn't come easy sometimes, but I promise you, with help, support, awareness, knowledge, education, self-compassion, it really, really is possible.
Something that somebody close to me said when I told them that I had received an ADHD diagnosis was, but you've written 3 books, as if somebody's ability to complete something is a defining, I think it can feel very defining for those of us who struggle with executive function or who have ADHD. But it was interesting to me just what the perception of ADHD was from somebody who wasn't particularly informed. Like, there are people with ADHD accomplishing all sorts of massive things all day long. And actually, what's really interesting about being specifically a romance author is that there are a lot of people, a lot of neurodivergent people writing in that space. That being said, I do feel like every day for me is like a new journey of trying to figure out how to do it. And then on top of that, how to be a writer or to write books and not be especially hard on myself, because for me, one thing that really just comes up is a lot of like, why can't I do this? What's like, I don't have a system. What's wrong with me? And I now kind of am able to speak to that side of myself with much more empathy, but it can be really hard. I think we do things differently, and it doesn't always look the same day to day to day. For some other folks it does, but I've had to kind of just accept that side of how I write.
Totally. And, the undercurrent of that is exhaustion, is burnout. Like what you said before about there's so many people with ADHD accomplishing so many things, but to what expense is that? Like we have a finite amount of energy, and because doing things in order, sequencing, again, our working memory, like we have to work maybe 2x, 3x as hard as a neurotypical person to achieve that. And then at the expense of maybe our family, parenting, like literally having to kind of go to bed for like 2 or 3 days. I know that you've experienced burnout in the past, and I guess, how do you deal with that? And how did that show up for you?
It's so interesting. My most recent novel, One Last Summer, it's a romantic comedy, but the main character is suffering from burnout, and she's kind of the last to realize it. And what dawned on me as I was in the throes of kind of promoting this book was that I was dealing with some immense burnout and just had completely rationalized it, brushed it aside, kind of made it like, well, I'm just not focused enough or working hard enough. And I ended up like leaving the podcast that I had created and worked on for 6.5 years and that I really loved making and loved doing. And I worked with my best friend, and it was such a gift, this podcast. The community was amazing. But I was struggling so intensely with being burnt out. And it's also, it can feel kind of silly to talk about because like a podcast is not performing. I'm not an anesthesiologist in a hospital. I am not a preschool teacher juggling 34-year-olds. Like it is, I heard somebody say it's not hard work, but it's a lot of work. And that really resonated with me because I was really struggling with the amount of work and trying to switch back and forth between writing a book in the morning and then for an hour we would have to record a podcast. Like my brain couldn't quite handle the constant switching of focus. And when I actually spoke to my podcast partner about this, who's neurotypical, and I was like, it's really hard for me to go from preparing for this interview and doing an interview and then trying to go right after, like I physically can't do it. And she was like, oh yeah, I have no problem doing that. And it was really interesting to me because I don't think I understood that could be a thing. That could be a thing. A part of ADHD was just that like switching back and forth and kind of trying to contain all this information in my head would be so challenging. Taking something out, I think, has helped kind of alleviate the brain stress of it all.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, what you're talking about is the task switching. So the task switching, I guess, is we have this part of our brain that is challenged by lots of different tasks, priority, sequencing. And when we have to kind of have like a buffer zone. We have to have time to kind of like decompress and breathe and maybe go for a walk and just kind of like settle before we start another task. And I think you're right, neurotypical people can do this a bit better than us, still probably feel that brain stress, but it just doesn't impact them to the same level that it impacts us, where we feel really burnt out and really fried from it.
I think for folks with ADHD, one thing we do is like we come up with like 8 million systems to try to navigate the scramble, but that can also be part of what burns us out. And like I say these things, they're challenges, but like then on the flip side, they're also like, I think some of my greatest like gifts as a creative person and as a friend and all the things. So I want to make sure I'm acknowledging like the beauty of it too. But when it's the pendulum swings to the really hard side of it, it can just be hard to contain all the information in your brain, and then the balls get dropped or the systems start failing you, and it can, that's kind of when the negative self-talk and the self-esteem gets really impacted, for me anyway.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, because I can see in the video, whoever's going to watch this on Instagram, there's lots of post-it notes behind you, and you said to me that this potentially might be, a plot of a new book. But is that how you download your ideas? Like how does it work for you as an author, a novelist who's going to have to come up with a structure and a beginning, middle, and an end? Like, how does it work with ADHD?
So I'm writing my 4th book right now, actually. And I think what I'm starting to learn and understand about myself is that I don't have one way of doing it. And that is my way of writing books, because we get this question a lot as authors where it's like, what's your writing process? And how do you, do you outline or do you just draft a book? And I think people want a concrete answer of like, here's what I do every time. And I think I've always put a lot of pressure on myself to have something like that. Like, oh, I outline a book this way and I use these steps, and then I write this amount of, and it's just not, I don't think that's realistic, one, for many people who have other jobs and other commitments as writers, but also for me, like my brain I don't have a definitive way. This is the only book that I've ever Post-it noted. And this book is not written. This is just kind of an idea I've had, and I just was scribbling, and I thought I need to be more visual. Like, it helps me to be visual. why don't I post-it note and put it on this door behind me in my office? And then for the book I'm writing now, I wrote an outline. And then for other books I've written, I've never done a single outline, and I've just kind of written them very freely. So
Wow.
I think part of the process is accept it, for me anyway. Again, for me, it's been accepting that my process for things can change and can be different every time. So much of my life, I've put a lot of pressure on myself to be like, you've got to do it this way, and this is how you do something, and you do it that way every time. That's kind of how I was taught, I guess, to be a human. And that's just not realistic for me. Kind of meeting that with like acceptance has been, or it's a process. I'm still kind of figuring it out. I think also though, as a writer, there are certain things that are consistent. Like I know I need to see things. I'm a visual person. I try to work in short bursts of energy, and I use this thing called the time timer. Do you have one on your desk? Yes.
I've got to say.
And that helps me. I love that. Whenever I turn mine on, it always starts beeping. There are certain tools that I know kind of help me every time. Like there are people who use the app Notion, and there are a lot of people with ADHD who use the app Notion. For me, I can't use it because I need to see stuff directly in front of me. And the radical acceptance that my way is okay, even if it doesn't look like anybody else's, or even if it's different every time, doesn't mean that it doesn't have value and it isn't working.
Yeah.
And for me, so much of ADHD, and I also have OCD and anxiety and all these other things, but so much of it is connected to my self-worth and self-esteem and like kind of a narrative I've had about myself for my whole life. So I'm having to accept things about myself in a way with a lot more like love and grace than I've ever given myself before.
I just wanted to offer you now an exclusive snippet from the audiobook, and I thought today I would share with you how to use this book. And it's really explaining the roadmap of the book, explaining, what it is, when you should be using it, how to use it. And I hope it gives you a bit more of an insight as to why I believe this book is going to be so helpful for so many people. So here it is. How to use this book. This is a pick and mix toolkit curated to help you with the often daily challenges you may face. It offers advice for different days and recognises that at varying stages in your life, you will need different things. Sometimes you will be thriving and sometimes struggling. It will show you the power you possess to make choices and lifestyle changes that will help you and that you can live in the present without anxiety and fear. Whether you are reading this book for yourself or a loved one, you are sure to find lots of actionable ideas for how to better support yourself or someone else with ADHD. Although this book focuses on ADHD in those assigned female at birth, it is designed to benefit anyone who is living with ADHD or suspects that they might have it regardless of their gender. You can open the book at any page and dive in, but I have also written it as a roadmap to uncovering your authentic self, whether that's before or after diagnosis. It explores why we behave and think as we do with our ADHD brains, delving into the issues we face and offering solutions and tools to help. Each chapter outlines a problem that we face or a goal to achieve. Before breaking things down in more detail, we then identify the scaffolding to build you up and what we can do to make it better, introducing specific tools to help us get there. Not every tool will be right for everyone at every time, but by providing a range of ADHD-tailored advice, you can find what works for you. You'll also be able to read expert opinions from leading thinkers and researchers in the field and insights from real women with ADHD. I've added reflective moments and prompts too, to help you make the most of your unique journey. More than anything, I hope the following guidance will help you to convince your brain that it is okay and safe to be present. The day-by-day tweaking and updating of thoughts, behaviours and habits alongside a true understanding of ADHD will set you on the right path and help you feel happier overall. It is time to understand your past, accept your present and learn how to light up your future. Sending you all my love. All the details are in the show notes, and I will speak to you all on Thursday, where you're going to hear a lot more about me, about the book, and about what it is going to help you with. Take care. I hear from so many of you every week that this podcast has helped you immeasurably. And if that is the case, and it really has helped you understand and validate yourself and your experiences, as well as giving you options and ways to move forward positively and finally believe that you can thrive at life with more insights and more guidance, I would absolutely love it if you could support the podcast with a small tip. I actively choose not to hand over the sponsorship or advertising of this podcast to ensure that it's the most pleasurable and easy listening experience for you as the listener. So any tip or any contribution is greatly appreciated to ensure that I can carry on with this podcast, with the content. All the details are in the show notes. There's a link there. Thank you so much, and see you for the next episode.